U.S. Central Command touted new video of what it says are Iranian targets being decimated by precision U.S. airstrikes. However, our next guest warns this aerial campaign will likely not be enough to affect real change in Iran. Let's bring in Robert Pape, a professor of political science at the University of Chicago and the author of The Escalation Trap on Substack. Professor, thank you so much for joining us. Historically, has regime change ever been brought about from an air assault?
It has not. What I do is risk assessment. I'm not here to have a crystal ball, but for 30 years, I've been studying air campaigns, everyone in history. I've taught strategic targeting for the U.S. Air Force. I just spent 20 years modeling the bombing of Iran. And the fact of the matter is, for over a century, states have been trying to topple regimes with air power alone. And I'm choosing my words carefully, it has never worked. We are heading toward the predictable result of growing risk, growing escalation, and I'm sorry to say, this could go on for quite some time.
But Professor, surely there's also covert operations going on the ground. So there is that ground element. Do you think, we should be factoring that in more?
We always have covert operations. So when we tried to decapitate Gaddafi, April of 1986, with the very first set of waves of precision bombs, we had covert operations. When we went after Milosevic and his regime in March '99, again, plenty. This is the U.S. government. We have nothing but CIA all around Washington, D.C. This is not the problem. The problem is not that we don't hit the targets. We do that. The problem is, as you're seeing, the opening plan did not produce quick and decisive victory. And it's not because we don't have those tools, it's because it's ultimately a self-defeating policy practice politically. We are injecting nationalism, and the usual result is you get a more hardline leader. This is why President Trump's saying, I don't want that one guy. It's because he would be much worse than what we had before. And this is the normal result of these efforts to win through leadership decapitation, topple the regime alone. And what you are seeing is now, even Pete Hegseth said this may go on 8 weeks. They really have opened not just the Pandora's box, but an open-ended and what you're seeing is the regime can do many things to prolong the war and hurt us and never fight a set-piece battle with us. That's how we lost the Vietnam War, and I'm sorry to say we're heading down a road where we don't have a strategy to win.
So, Professor, I love the fact that you referenced the Vietnam War because you no doubt have seen that the President of the United States has suggested that he should have a role in picking the next leader of Iran. And of course, we know through history that one of the reasons why the war in Vietnam began in the first place is the United States supporting and installing the leader of South Vietnam, Diem, after the French withdrawal. We also know in this current environment, as we look to what is happening with Iran, that this all began in 1953 when the United States, along with other Western powers, helped to overthrow the democratically elected leader of Iran, Mohammad Mossadegh, and installed the Shah, which led directly to the Iranian Revolution in 1979. So, in other words,
the hostage crisis.
And the hostage crisis, and where we are. So the question, of course, is, we don't have a great track record when it comes to picking leaders of sovereign nations. And so then what is the risk for the United States if the president gets his wish?
Well, that was really quite brilliant, let me just say. And in fact, why we lost the Vietnam War is how I started studying this problem in the 1980s. I wanted to know, how could you lose with all that great wealth, power, air power? And the reason is because you can destroy targets, but it won't stop the nationalism in the long war. Now, when I started to work for the U.S. Air Force, precision age, all of a sudden you talked about intel. This was the whole idea. The idea is, wow, we have precision targeting. We'll do this with precision intel. We really can now take down governments. And notice, we just can't simply do that. We've tried over and over and over in the precision age. There's a record of 0 success in the last 30 years. And the reason is because the targeting is so mesmerizing, you don't see the long war coming. And that's the big thing. You say, what is the risk? The risk is this will not just stop at escalation in the Middle East. This will start to escalate more globally as the weeks and time goes on. Iran, big supporter of terrorism, no doubt about that. We seem to be saying they're a supporter of terrorism and ignoring they can do terrorism. So this is really making no sense. That's what I'm trying to say. There's not really a strategy here. Doubling down, talking tough and smack in front of your publics. That is the way democracies often get into these long wars. And then those leaders basically have look like embarrassments years and years later because it turns out it just doesn't work. So where is the strategy is my question.
Professor Robert Pape, with so many questions, so much important context, thank you so much.